This is the intro to a series of videos on volleyball positions. Number 1 through 6, that's fairly common in volleyball. So I'm looking at half a court here, and I've got the net drawn as the top line, so you're basically your opponent will be up of this slide or away, and you're looking sort of over the top view. So the one position is the serving position. And then it usually, when you rotate in volleyball, you think of it as rotating clockwise. So if you just served, you'll go to middle back or the 6th position, and then to 5, and then you'll get in the front row and rotate across the front row. But the numbering is backwards from that, so it's counterclockwise starting at the server's position. 1, 2 is in the right front, 3 is in the middle, and etc. around to 6. And the reason for that is pretty much for scoring, because you'll submit a lineup, which is sort of like a baseball batting order. So the first server will be there, and then the second server will come from the right front, and third server. So it makes sense when you think of tracking it as a referee. So that's how they number it, and pretty much most people stick with that numbering. So I have another video on my YouTube page that describes a lot more about defense and a lot of tips. But I did want to cover real quick. Normally you'll see the 5 in the left back, the 6 in the middle back, and the 1 in the right back are the positions that are in the back row, digging hits from the opponent's side. And normally you'll be in some kind of cup shape like that, where 6 is a little deeper than 5 and 1. You could play flat, you could play 3 across, and there's nothing wrong with that, except for you have a tendency of, when you ball goes between, let's say, 6 and 1, that you'll head for each other and you'll crash into each other, and if you do that enough, you'll injure yourself over time. So an old rule is that the back row, or the further back person, in this case it's the 6 in the cup, will always, if you're going to move in the direction of number 1, you'll move in a direction where you're not heading towards them or in front of them. You'll head behind them, and I kind of showed it with the arrow, and 1 will reply in kind. They won't move in a direction that's moving backwards of number 6, and I know that kind of limits you. That means 6 has the entire corner back there, but if you always move, if both team members move in that direction, then you'll pretty much never collide, and you'll never get those injuries that happen that way. And it's the same thing with 5 and 6 that are adjacent to each other. Again, 6 goes behind, and even when you get to 1 and 2 or 5 and 4, I've drawn 5 and 4 as the opponents are hitting on the left side, because 2 and 3 will be blocking. But 4 and 5, same thing. Now 4 is usually in there covering tips anyways, but number 5, don't head in a direction that is towards number 4. Always head behind them or to the left of them in this particular example. And the same thing with number 4. Don't go backwards that way. So yeah, some balls may fall, but this is just a safety thing, and eventually you'll learn that. It'll also help you tremendously to learn your positions team defense wise. I'm also going to cover attack shots. I'll call it shots in this case. So the opponent is attacking your defense in this particular case, so they're hitting from the other side of the net. I've shown basically a left side hitter on the opponent, so they're hitting out of their 4 position. And the typical attacks are either a line attack. I'll call it a 1-6 gap, so you're trying to hit between players 1 and 6 wherever they are, and that's usually between the block or beating the block, so the middle blocker number 3 doesn't get out there, and you hit it inside number 2. Or you go with the 5-6 gap, which is basically also called cross court. It's very rare that you're going to try to hit 4 to 5. That's very tight. You need other shots. You need a whole plethora of shots, such as tips, dinks, rolls. But these are your big power shots. And you normally don't want to hit it 2 number 5 or 2 number 6 or 2 number 1. You're going to not be as successful. I know you can overpower people, and in some cases it works out for you, but in general you try to hit between players, so you should at least know these gaps. And the 5-6 gap becomes very important, not so much on this side, but especially on the other side. When you're hitting from the right hand side, that's a common hit, a common location for you to go, especially out of the back row. So I'll be talking more about that in the other series. Of course, as a right side player, there's one more shot, which is their line shot. I didn't draw it in here, but essentially, going outside number 5 towards the sideline. Sometimes that's open. So this is attack shots. And I do want to put this slide in the intro. I will be talking about attack zones as I go through position in the other videos, and I'm going to tell you there's 8 attack zones. Of course, it can vary. I mean, people got, but I've got them numbered out here, and these numbers will vary too, and depending on terminology. But basically, I've got 6 in the front and 2 in the back. The P and the D are the 10-foot line, so your back row players can attack above the height of the net from the back row line. They can jump from behind that line to in front of it and attack the ball at any particular time. If you jump from in front of the 10-foot line and you're a back row player, you cannot contact the ball while it's entirely above the height of the net. That doesn't mean you can't attack. It just gets really tricky. The rule is not jumping. The rule is where the ball is in relation to the plane at the top of the net. So I've got in a little bit more red, bright red, the 4 primary kind of hitting zones. There's one out the left side called a 4 or a go set, pretty common terminology. Then the one adjacent to that is number 3. It's on the net itself, and that's kind of a gap set. So a lot of times your middle hitter will try to hit out there if your opposing middle blocker is not moving with you. They're kind of playing position or covering the setter. Then you might have a gap out there between those two. The 1 set is right in front of the center, usually middle hitter it's at. The setter itself can attack, especially in the front row. You can attack above the net, and in the back row you can actually attack slightly below the net, but usually that's a front row option. Next to that is a secondary option called the back quick, or whatever you want to call it. So either the front can come around there, the middle front, or sometimes the right side hitters in the front row can be attacking there. That's closer to the setter you are, the quicker the pace is. So number 1 and the setter itself in the back are pretty quick paced, and obviously as the ball travels out. And the 5 out there is just the right side hit, standard right side hit for attacking out at the pin. The pins are the antennas. Very common terminology there. And I've only listed 2 out of the back row. The right side back there is the D set. There used to be an A, B, C, and T, if you can imagine that going across the back line, and numbers in the front, an old USA type system. But it's kind of stuck with it. It's the D, it's the right back coming out of there. And then the middle back is what I'll call the pipe. That's pretty pipe or bick. Bick is a back quick, but the pipe is the same type of thing. So usually your middle back player will execute that. So just want to familiarize with the 8 attacking zones, because we're going to be talking about terminology as we talk about the positions themselves.